Welcome to Quiet History. I'm your host, Adnan. The rain wasn't just falling in Seattle, it was vibing. You know that kind of drizzle that doesn't soak you instantly, but wraps the whole city in a gray, moody blanket? Yeah, that's the one. Down on 4th Avenue, the neon sign for Jax's Grind was flickering just a bit, a soft electric hum that sounded like the city's heartbeat. Inside, Jax was leaning against the espresso machine, his arms crossed over a faded black apron. He wasn't just a barista, he was a mood architect. The shop smelled like expensive dark roast, old paperbacks, and that specific scent of rain hitting hot pavement. Man, this weather is straight up immaculate, Jax muttered to himself, checking the grind on a batch of Sumatra beans. He was a guy who appreciated the lo-fi life. While the rest of the world was chasing the next big hustle, Jax was out here trying to master the perfect foam-to-milk ratio. The bell above the door gave a tired little jingle. In walked Leo, a regular who looked like he'd been dragged through a hedge backwards. His hoodie was soaked, and his sneakers were making that pathetic squelch sound on the hardwood floor. "Yo, Jax, tell me you've got something that'll bring me back to life," Leo said, dropping his bag onto a stool. "The subway was a total cluster today. I'm talking delays, people acting wild, the whole 9 yards. Jax smirked, already reaching for a ceramic mug. "Say no more, fam. I got you. You look like you need the midnight oil special. Extra shot, touch of honey, and a sprinkle of cinnamon to make you feel like a human again." "Big facts," Leo sighed, resting his head on his hand. "You're a real one, Jax." As the machine started to hiss and whistle, Jax looked out the window. The street lights were reflecting off the puddles, turning the asphalt into a shimmering oil painting. There was a girl across the street, huddled under a bright yellow umbrella, waiting for a bus that was probably 20 minutes late. "You ever think about how everyone in this city is just drifting?" Jax asked, pouring the steamed milk with the precision of a surgeon. A perfect white heart bloomed in the dark liquid. "Like we're all just NPCs in someone else's game until we sit down for a coffee?" Leo took the mug, the steam fogging up his glasses. "That's deep, bro. A bit existential for a Tuesday, but I feel you. This place, it's like the only spot in the zip code that doesn't feel like a corporate fever dream. It's got, what do the kids call it? Authenticity." Jax laughed, a low, warm sound. "I just call it not being a sellout. But hey, if the vibe check passes, I'm happy." He moved to the back to check on the pastries. On rainy days like this, people didn't just want caffeine, they wanted comfort. He pulled out a tray of maple bacon scones he'd baked an hour ago. They were still warm, the glaze tacky and sweet. "You want a scone, Leo? On the house. You look like you've had a rough one." "Wait, for real? Bet. You're goated for that," Leo said, his face lighting up.
Jack served the scone on a small wooden board. He liked the ritual of it, the clink of the spoon, the swirl of the steam, the muffled sound of a lo-fi hip-hop beat playing from the speakers in the corner. It was a vibe that hit different when the world outside was cold and chaotic. The door opened again, letting in a gust of chilly air and a woman in a sharp trench coat. She looked like she belonged in a boardroom, but her eyes were scanning the menu with a desperate kind of hunger. "Welcome to the grind," Jack said, his voice smooth and welcoming. "Take your time. We're in no rush here. The rain's doing the running for us today." She looked up, startled by the lack of corporate energy, and for the first time in what looked like a long day, She actually smiled. I think I just need something warm. I can definitely make that happen, Jax replied. The woman in the trench coat, her name was Elena, though Jax didn't know it yet, stepped closer to the counter. She was checking her phone every 5 seconds, her thumb hovering over the screen like it was a detonator. Jax had seen this look 1,000 times. It was the corporate burnout look, a classic city vibe. "I'll just take a black coffee," she said, her voice tight. "Whatever's fastest. I have a Zoom call in 10 minutes, and my laptop is on 4%. Jax didn't move a muscle toward the quick brew pot. Instead, he leaned on the counter, giving her a look that was part zen, part rebel. "Look, I could give you the drip coffee that's been sitting there for 20 minutes, but honestly, it's mid. If you're about to jump into a meeting that's stressing you out this much, you deserve something that doesn't taste like battery acid." Elena paused, her thumb finally stopping its frantic scrolling. She looked at Jax, really looked at him. "I don't have time for a masterpiece, Jax. I saw the name on the door." 5 minutes, Jax countered, holding up 5 fingers. "I'll make you a pour-over. It'll clear your head, and hey, there's a power outlet right under that corner booth that actually works. Most places in this neighborhood have outlets that are basically just decoration at this point." Elena sighed, a long, shaky breath that seemed to deflate her shoulders. "Fine, you win, but if I lose my connection, I'm blaming the beans." "High stakes, I like it," Jax grinned. He started the process. The pour-over was a ritual, a slow, steady stream of hot water over fresh grounds. He watched the coffee bloom, the gas escaping in little bubbles. To anyone else, it was just science. To Jax, it was poetry. "You're not from around here, are you, Leo?" piped up from his stool, his mouth half full of maple bacon scone. "You got that upstate energy." Elena looked over, skeptical. "Is it that obvious? I moved here 6 months ago for a VP position. I thought I'd love the hustle, but man, this city is a whole different beast. It's like everyone is constantly trying to main character their way through life, and I'm just trying to find a decent salad that doesn't cost $20. Jax laughed as he handed her the coffee in a heavy handmade ceramic mug. "Here's the tea, Elena. Or, well, the coffee. In this city, if you don't carve out 10 minutes for yourself to just exist, the concrete will swallow you whole." She took a sip. Her eyes widened. "Wait, why is this actually good? Like, scary good?" "It's called not cutting corners," Jax said, cleaning a steam wand. "People think they can shortcut everything with an app or an AI, but you can't code soul. You can't automate the vibe." She took another sip and actually put her phone face down on the table. She walked over to the corner booth, plugged in her charger, and slumped into the cracked leather seat. The neon sign outside flickered again, casting a soft pink glow over her face. For a while, the only sound was the rain drumming a steady beat against the glass and the low hum of a lo-fi remix of an old jazz standard. Jax started prepping a batch of midnight brownies, dark chocolate, sea salt, and a hint of espresso powder. "Yo, Jax," Leo called out, scrolling through his own phone. "Did you see the news? They're saying the storm's going to turn into a full-on washout tonight. Flooding on the lower levels, buses canceled. The whole city's going to be on pause." Jax looked at the window. The rain was coming down harder now, thick sheets of water blurring the lights of the city into long, glowing streaks. "Good," Jax murmured. "Maybe people will finally stop running for 5 seconds." Suddenly, the lights in the cafe flickered violently. Pop! Darkness.
The neon sign died. The espresso machine gave a final, wheezing sigh. The only light left came from the flickering street lamps outside and the dim glow of Leo and Elena's phone screens. Well, Jack said into the sudden silence, I guess the universe just forced the vibe check. Jax, you got candles, right? Elena's voice came from the corner, sounding surprisingly calm, almost relieved. Better, Jax replied, reaching under the counter. I got the vintage lanterns. Stay put, nobody move. Let's make this interesting. The darkness wasn't the scary kind. It was that thick, velvety silence that only happens when a city's hum gets unplugged. Jax reached under the counter and pulled out 3 vintage brass lanterns, relics he'd found at a thrift store in Brooklyn years ago. He struck a long match, the flame dancing in his eyes for a second before he lit the wicks. The soft, amber glow began to fill the room, catching the edges of the jars of coffee beans and making the shadows on the walls look like they were slow dancing. Okay, this is actually kind of fire, Leo said, his voice dropping an octave to match the mood. It's like we just time traveled to the 1800s, but with better hoodies. Elena laughed from her corner. The blue light of her phone was gone. She'd finally tucked it into her bag. I was supposed to be presenting a slide deck on market scalability right now. Instead, I'm sitting in a blackout in a cafe that smells like heaven. Honestly, best Tuesday ever. No cap. Jack set a lantern on her table. See? The universe is looking out for you, Elena. It knew that meeting was going to be a snooze fest. You're a trip, Jax, she replied, leaning back. Most business owners would be low-key freaking out about lost revenue right now. You're just out here vibing. Money comes and goes, but a mood like this is rare, Jax said, wiping down the counter by candlelight. Besides, I got a gas stove in the back. I can still make pour-overs and hot chocolate. We're chillin'. Just then, the heavy front door creaked open. It didn't jingle this time. The electronic bell was dead. A figure stepped in, draped in a long, dark trench coat that was literally dripping. This person wasn't just wet. They looked like they'd just crawled out of the Puget Sound. "We closed, man?" asked the stranger. His voice sounded like gravel rubbing against silk, deep, raspy, and soulful. "For anyone else, maybe, but you look like you've got a story to tell, and I've got a pot of coffee that needs drinking. Step into the light, man. Pull up a stool." He nodded, his movements slow and deliberate. He sat at the far end of the bar, placing his guitar case carefully on the floor. "Name's Elias," he said. "I've been busking down by the pier, but when the sky opened up like this, even the seagulls headed for cover. I saw your lanterns from 3 blocks away, like a lighthouse in a sea of gray." Jax poured him a steaming cup of the strongest roast he had. "On the house, Elias. You look like you need to thaw out." Elias took a sip, closing his eyes as the steam hit his face. "Man, that's the real deal. That hits different when your bones are cold." Elena leaned forward, curious. "You play in this weather?" Elias looked over at her, a small knowing smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Music sounds better in the rain, miss. The air is thicker. The notes don't just fly away, they linger. But tonight the rain is too loud even for me." "Play something," Leo suggested. "I mean, the Wi-Fi's dead, the lights are out. What else we gonna do? Jax, you cool with some live tracks?" Jax leaned against the back wall, crossing his arms. "I was hoping someone would ask. The floor's yours, Elias. Keep it lo-fi, keep it moody." Elias didn't need to be asked twice. He clicked open the latches of his case and pulled out an old acoustic guitar. It was beat up, covered with stickers from cities Jax had only dreamed of visiting. He tuned it for a second, the twang of the strings echoing beautifully in the quiet cafe. Then he started to strum. It wasn't a fast song. It was a slow, bluesy rhythm that seemed to mimic the pace of the raindrops hitting the roof. It was the kind of music that makes you remember things you haven't thought about in years. Your first heartbreak,
the smell of your childhood home, the feeling of being lost and found at once. Elena stared out the window, her chin in her hand. For the first time since she'd entered the shop, she looked completely at peace. The hustle was gone. The VP was gone. She was just a girl in a city listening to a stranger play the blues. "Damn," Leo whispered. "That's straight up soul food."
As Elias played, the music seemed to weave through the shadows, wrapping round the four of them like a warm scarf. He wasn't just playing chords, he was telling a story without using words. Every slide of his fingers on the strings felt like a memory being pulled out of a dusty box. Jack stopped what he was doing and just leaned there, mesmerized. He'd heard a lot of musicians in his day. This city was crawling with them, but there was something different about Elias. There was pain and power in it, raw, no filters, no auto-tune, just wood and wire. "That song," Elena said softly, her voice barely a whisper so she wouldn't break the spell. "It sounds familiar, like a dream I had a long time ago." Elias stopped playing, his hand resting on the strings to dampen the vibration. He looked at her with eyes that seemed to see right through the corporate armor she wore. "It's called The Drifter's Lullaby. I wrote it for someone I lost back in '98. She used to love the rain too. Said it was the only time the world felt honest." "Man, that's heavy," Leo said, leaning in. "You've been carrying that song for a long time, huh?" "A song is a light burden, son," Elias replied, taking a slow sip of his coffee. "It's the silence afterward that gets heavy." Jax reached for a jar of cookies and placed a few on a plate, sliding them toward Elias. "You ever regret it? The traveling, the busking, the lack of a real job?" Elias laughed, a dry, raspy sound. "Jax, look at me. I'm cold, I'm wet, and I don't know where I'm sleeping tomorrow. But when I play that guitar, I'm the richest man in Seattle. I see people like this young lady here," he gestured toward Elena, "running themselves into the ground for a paycheck that doesn't love them back. I chose freedom. It's a lonely choice, but it's mine." Elena looked down at her coffee mug. The VP title felt like a lead weight all of a sudden. "I used to play the cello," she admitted, surprised at her own honesty. "I was actually pretty good, but then college happened, then the internship, then the promotion, and I stopped. I told myself I'd get back to it when I was successful enough. But when is that? When do you actually win the game?" "The game is rigged, sis," Leo added, his usual goofy energy replaced by a rare moment of clarity. "My dad worked 60 hours a week at the shipyard just to have a heart attack 2 years after he retired. After that, I was like, nah, I'm good. I'll deliver packages, I'll take the subway, I'll live in a studio apartment. But my time, that's my own, no cap." Jax nodded. "That's why I started the grind. People told me I was tripping, that I should go into tech or real estate, but I wanted a place where the clock didn't matter, a place where you could be mid and it's still okay. You don't have to be a hustler here. You just have to be." The rain outside intensified, a sudden thunderclap shaking the windows. The glass rattled, and for a second, the lanterns flickered as if they were about to go out. But the little oasis held firm. "You know," Elena said, a mischievous glint appearing in her eyes,
I actually have my old cello in the trunk of my car. I was moving some stuff to storage today. It's been in its case for 3 years. Jax's eyebrows shot up. No way. Elena, if you're capping right now, I'm going to be heated. I'm serious, she laughed, and for the first time it wasn't a polite corporate laugh. It was real. I think I'm going to go get it. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? I get a little wet? Bet, Leo hyped her up, clapping his hands. Go get that thing. Let's have a full-on unplugged session. Jax, you got any more of those brownies? This vibe is officially legendary. Coming right up, Jax said, feeling a surge of genuine happiness. Elena stood up, straightened her trench coat, and took a deep breath. She looked at the rain outside, dark street. Elias started a slow, rhythmic strum, waiting for her return. Jax started plating the midnight brownies, his hands moving in time with the music. Yo, Jax, Leo whispered, looking at the door. Is it just me, or did this Tuesday just become the most main character moment of our lives? Jax grinned, sliding a plate of warm, fudgy brownies onto the counter. It's not just you, Leo. It's not just you. The door burst open with a gust of cold, wet wind that made the lanterns dance wildly. Elena stepped in, breathless, her hair plastered to her forehead and her trench coat soaked through. But in her arms she held a large black hard-shell case like it was a long-lost friend. She's back! The legend actually did it! Leo cheered, throwing his hands up. Elena laughed, wiping the rainwater from her eyes. I must be out of my mind. My boss would think I've had a mental breakdown. But honestly, I've never felt more sane. She walked over to the corner, near Elias. With trembling fingers, she clicked open the latches. The cello sat there, its polished wood gleaming under the amber lantern light. She pulled out the bow, tightened it, and took a seat on a wooden stool Jax had pulled out for her. Jax stepped out from behind the counter, leaning against a pillar. He didn't want to miss a second of it. The rain was hammering the roof now, a relentless percussive roar that acted as the perfect backdrop. Elias nodded at her, a silent after you. Elena took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and drew the bow across the strings. A deep, soulful note vibrated through the room, a sound so rich and melancholic it made the hair on Jax's arms stand up. It wasn't perfect. There was a slight rasp where her technique was rusty, but it had feeling. Elias caught the key instantly. He started a soft, walking bass line on his guitar, his fingers moving like spiders over the frets. The guitar's crispness danced around the cello's deep, weeping moans. Oh, that's the vibe, Leo whispered, closing his eyes. That's straight up ethereal. They didn't play a song anyone knew. They played the room. They played the darkness, the steam from the coffee, the smell of the brownies, and the rhythm of the storm outside. It was a conversation between two people who had nothing in common except for this one moment in time. Jax felt a strange lump in his throat. He looked around his little shop, the peeling paint, the mismatched furniture, the dead espresso machine, and he realized he wouldn't trade it for a skyscraper in Manhattan. This was the new American dream, not a house with a white picket fence, but a moment of true, unscripted human connection in a world that was becoming increasingly robotic. Check it, Leo whispered, pointing at the window. A few people walking by in the rain had stopped. They were huddled under umbrellas, staring through the glass at the lantern-lit scene. A young couple, an old man with a dog, a delivery guy on a bike. They were all drawn to the light. Jax walked to the door and unlocked it. He didn't say a word. He just gestured for them to come in. One by one, they trickled in, shaking off their umbrellas and moving quietly so as not to disrupt the music. The cafe was filling up, not with customers, but with a community of the rain-drenched. Jax didn't ask for orders. He just kept pouring coffee, handing out brownies, and keeping the lanterns lit. The Neon Rain Cafe had become a sanctuary. As the song reached its crescendo, Elena's bow was moving faster, her face flushed with a mix of exertion and pure joy. Elias was grinning, his head bobbing as he slapped the body of his guitar for percussion. The music rose up, filling every corner, pushing back the shadows, making the cold night feel warm. When they finally hit the last note, the silence that followed wasn't empty, it was full. The small crowd burst into applause, not the polite clap you give at a recital, but a loud, rowdy, you just saved my night kind of cheer. "Yo, that was legendary," Leo shouted, high-fiving the air. Elena looked at her cello, then at the strangers in the room, and then at Jax. A tear tracked through the raindrops on her cheek. I totally forgot how this felt." "Don't forget again," Elias said, packing his guitar away with a satisfied sigh. "The world needs more of that, and less of whatever's on your phone." Jax looked at the clock. It was nearly 2 a.m. The storm was finally starting to let up, the thunder moving further east toward the mountains. "All right, fam, the lights might be out, but the vibe is lit. Who wants another round of midnight oil before we call it a night?" The clock on the wall was still frozen at the moment the power cut, but the sky outside was beginning to shift from a deep bruised purple to a soft misty blue. The blue hour had arrived. The rain had tapered off into a fine mist that clung to the windows like tiny diamonds. One by one, the strangers who had wandered in during the storm started to head out. They didn't just leave, they thanked Jax with a nod or a quiet word, their faces looking a lot less stressed than when they'd first walked in. The delivery guy even left a $5 tip on the counter, despite the coffee being on the house. "I guess the real world is calling," Leo said, stretching his arms over his head. He looked at his empty brownie plate with a tragic expression. "Man, I'm going to be thinking about those scones for a week. No cap, Jax, you're the goat of this neighborhood." Jax chuckled, leaning his elbows on the counter. "Appreciate you, Leo. Stay safe out there. Don't let the subway vibes get you down today." "Always, bro. Catch you on the flip side." Leo threw a peace sign before disappearing into the cool morning air. Elena was carefully wiping down her cello, her movements slow and reverent. She looked different. The sharp corporate edge in her eyes had softened into something more thoughtful, more grounded. "So, back to the boardroom?" Jax asked. Elena smiled, but it wasn't the practiced smile of a VP. "Actually, I think I'm going to call in sick, just for today. I need to find a place for this," she patted the cello case, "in my apartment that isn't a storage closet. And I think I might look for a community orchestra, or maybe just a park bench." She stood up and looked at Jax. "Thank you, Jax. You didn't just give me coffee tonight. You gave me back a version of myself I thought I'd lost. That's some high-level stuff right there." "Just doing my job, Elena," Jax said softly. "The grind isn't just about the beans, it's about the people who drink 'em." Elias was the last one to get up. He moved stiffly, his old joints protesting the cold. He slung his guitar case over his shoulder and looked at Jax with a knowing glint in his eye. "You got a good soul, kid. Keep the lanterns ready. There's always another storm coming, and people are always going to need a light to follow." "I'll be here," Elias promised.
As the old man walked out, the streetlights finally hummed back to life, then clicked off as the sun began to peek over the skyscrapers. The power was back. The neon sign for Jax's grind flickered and stayed on, a steady, glowing pink against the gray morning. Jax walked over to the front door and flipped the sign from open to closed. He needed a few hours of sleep before the morning rush started. He walked around the shop, picking up empty mugs and wiping down tables. The cafe was quiet again, but the energy of the night still lingered in the air. He could almost hear the echo of Elena's cello and the raspy warmth of Elias's voice. He looked at his own reflection in the window. He was tired, his apron was stained, and his bank account probably wasn't looking too pretty. But his heart felt full. He realized that in a city obsessed with leveling up and hustle culture, he had created something that couldn't be measured by an algorithm. He had created a glitch in the system, a place where time slowed down and souls could actually breathe. Jax grabbed a small chalkboard and a piece of white chalk. He walked to the sidewalk and wiped away yesterday's special. In bold, clean letters, he wrote, "The rain is just the city's way of telling you to slow down. Come in, stay a while. The vibe check is always free." He stepped back, looked at his work, and nodded. Then he went back inside, blew out the last of the lanterns, and watched the city wake up through the steam of his own perfect cup of coffee. The Neon Rain Cafe was ready for whatever came next.